I think once you understand the economic situation of the United States and how they're in a debt spiral, and there's only one way out of it, and it's to turn the money printer on so that they can inflate, so that they can pay off the debt, which just continues it. I mean, I think this audience all understands that, but once you understand that that's their incentive is not to spend money efficiently, it's to pump more dollars into the system. And any excuse there is to do that, they're going to take it. They're going to want to print money any chance they get. So a disaster is a perfect opportunity because people will be begging, yes, you need to do something. And our funding's out, but we'll just print some more and send it out and put it into the economy. And we'll just, those inflation numbers aren't going to come in for a lot longer. So I'm kind of surprised that they're not using it as an excuse and maybe even pumping up the death numbers higher as an excuse to print more, even more.
We have got a really awesome show today. This is one of the best ones. I felt like one of the best rips we've had in a while on the show, actually. Welcome to Bitcoin Audible. I am Guy Swan, the guy who's read more about Bitcoin than anybody else you know. I've been trying to, since Logano and everything, and trying to get back into the swing of everything that's been going on. I have been really wanting to get in touch and talk to the Bitcoin veterans on the show. We've kind of loosely been in contact over all of the Helene stuff and everything happening in Washington, D.C. and the just incredible work that they've been doing over there. But also I just wanted to get I felt like it would be incredibly useful to get a very in-depth discussion on what it's been like on the ground over there and how to think about threat vectors and how to make ourselves resilient and take responsibility for our community and our personal situations and what that really means to be sovereign and how everything that they're doing plays into that. And also how so much of it is a microcosm for what we've seen on a broader scale, and talk about some of the cultural and mental framework that has led us in the wrong direction, and maybe how it is that we've gotten here and why Bitcoin is such an important piece of this seemingly multifaceted and broad societal picture. Because it's so easy to dismiss it as just finance and just money without remembering, without acknowledging that money is the foundation of society. And when you mess up the money, you screw up everything. And I just thought this was a really fantastic conversation and just great guys and a lot of fun. It's Jordan Op Libertas, Mike Hobart, and Shane Hazel, which I've talked to all of them on the show in various forms before. I was on the show with Jordan. Mike, we've read a couple of his pieces, I think, and obviously Shane, good friends, just really good guys, and what they are doing over there with the Bitcoin veterans and their team. And so I just felt it was prime time to get an update and sit down and have a conversation with the Bitcoin vets. So with that, I just want to give a shout out. Fold, actually, right now they've been a sponsor in the past. They may be a sponsor in the future. We're kind of chatting with them. But I just wanted to say, because I've used it a couple of times already, they actually have really big gift cards with big percent back right now for Sats back. I think my Sats back right now is $7,000 worth because I've been stacking. And that's after I emptied it for the first 5 years that I've used it or something. I don't know. But this has literally just been the last year and a half. I've got another 7,000 worth of Sat stacked. So you should be checking it out, especially for holiday shopping. You can get $500 Amazon gift cards with a little bit more percent back than you usually get. So if you do your holiday shopping like I do, and you just do gift cards and you use your Fold card, now is a really good time if you haven't done that yet. So just a reminder for those who want to get a little bit of extra sats for the holidays. I've added my referral code in the show notes. Check that out. And with that, let's go ahead and get into today's episode. We're chat 118, Reviving Resiliency, Autonomy, and Masculinity with the Bitcoin Veterans. Shit, welcome to the show. I don't think, Mike, have I had you on the show before? I feel like we've talked, but
I think I have been on here.
I think so too. I feel like sometime in the last 1,500 episodes or so.
I know for sure that you've honored me by reading one or two of my pieces. So that's the stuff that I'm that's the stuff I'm most like, that's the stuff I really appreciate you for, man, because like the conversations are great, but I still remember being on Clubhouse when you were floating the idea of Bitcoin Audible, and we were all talking about how like you need to do it. So like it feels like I'm a part of history when I get Guy Swan reading one of my articles.
Hell yeah, dude. Jordan, this is the first time we've met, is it not?
I was on the show when you were on our show.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I was about to say, you look way too familiar, but I was certain that you hadn't been on the show. No. But okay, that makes more sense. Well, dude, good
I was having this
again.
moment like, had I been, because I've seen your background before, and like I feel like I've been, and I'm like, oh no, you were on our show though.
I'm finally updating my background, and the downstairs, the studio and stuff is. It's still just frames, but like sheetrock is sitting in the room. Things are slowly but surely moving. I'll probably be back in like a garage basement thing, because I think I'll have to move down there before I'm totally done with it. But I'm excited. And Shane, what's up, boss?
What's up, dog?
Guys, welcome to the show. I'm actually really sorry that I didn't get to go hang out with y'all at Nashville.
Yeah, you missed out.
I passed by y'all's place every single time I walked.
I actually went outside. I saw you walk
and my brother was walking. Was that you? that saw me outside?
I jumped out. I was like, "Guy, come over here!"
I was like, "I got stuff to do."
We were very much in like the same kind of conundrum though, man. Like we probably had like maybe an hour in the morning for like, our coffee to get made, and like we're getting it down, and then some of us maybe enjoy like a cigarette to start the morning, and then it was feet to like boot to ground for like 16 to 20 hours each day.
Yeah, dude, it was ridiculous. Like I
awesome.
Felt like we thought we had left ourselves enough time to, and I did the exact same stupid thing in Lugano. To get back and forth from where we were staying to the location. And then I would be like, oh my God, it's going to take me 23 minutes to walk this, and I have to be back there in 40 minutes, which means that I'm at 46 minutes, and then I just have to run. And I did that before my talk in Lugano, so I was out of breath when I got up on stage. I had just barely made it back in. I had been sprinting all the way from the hotel, and I was like, all right, guys, we're going to talk about BMI. Give me a second. It's ridiculous.
Everyone's like, man, he's terrible at talking in real life. He just uses AI, I guess, all the time
that guy's
to talk
cheating.
for him.
That guy's cheating. I know that his ass is on 11 labs. Oh man, dude. I have been wanting to do this. I know we like tried to do this like real quick before Lugano, but I've been wanting to do this for no other reason really than to get update on everything that you guys have been doing, because y'all have been one of my main resources, and I've mostly been disconnected from things since Lugano. And I was curious, is anybody out in West NC right now?
No, I'm going to be headed up there on Thursday again, though. So
okay.
Yeah, back in the territory here soon. We do have some guys that we've been working with out there from the Christian Rangers who have been off and on.
Christian Rangers, yeah. Yeah, I've been seeing them post a lot too.
Their guys, Micah for sure is one of the great guys who's leading that. He's their commander, and he's a Bitcoiner. So it's one of those things where to have these forces.
So yes, there is a Bitcoin veteran on the ground.
Yeah, it's great.
Can you give me the rundown of when and how this all started? When did you find out that there was like when did y'all even head down? And when was it that y'all realized what was going on? Because I feel like it was 2 days or something. At least like a day and a half that I realized I hadn't talked to my good friend who lives down there, and I was starting to see stuff creep up on social media, which sucks because, like those, it's just so critical how important like that first span of time is. And even knowing that something's going wrong and getting people to like on the ground and responding. And then I realized that, like I couldn't contact like my best friend, his wife, and their 1-year-old was in Asheville, and we thought they were okay. But it's like one of those things that like, I never even thought of the mountains as being like a big flooding problem. It's just like, oh, well, they're on a hill, like how's it going to flood? And it's like, oh, well, the whole side of the mountain just a mudslide just came down and took a neighborhood with it. And it's like, oh shit, yeah, they have a huge problem if it rains too much. And so it was kind of freaking me out.
3 years worth of rain in one night. It turns out that's a problem.
Crazy. So crazy. But yeah, kind of give me the origin story on what got y'all involved, who heard about it, and what the plan was.
To kick that conversation off, Guy. One of the major benefits of being in like our Bitcoin veterans group chats is that we have too many of them, so there's more than enough for everybody to have more than one. Yeah. But B, the chats that are a little bit bigger and a little bit more active, like everybody kind of figures out where everybody else is located a little bit. Maybe not like by name or like address or whatever, but like the general region of the country. And it got kind of to the point of the last couple of months of where when severe weather was popping up in an area and people knew that we had Bitcoin veterans in the area, it kind of started off as like, hey guys, just putting this out there, like especially in our Intel chats, like, hey, this hurricane is gearing up to get really strong and hit you guys down the southeast. And then it kind of just, and I'll let Shane and Jordan pick it up from here. It just snowballed to the point of like where we were throwing out like updates on the category status of the hurricane, like preparation, like getting
Mike turned into a Bitcoin veteran meteorologist throughout this. He was giving us weather updates along the way.
If you don't know who Chris Hall y'all is on YouTube, that's Mike's go-to, and he's phenomenal.
Chris Hall y'all,
and that one. Helena, I guess that popped up off of the Yucatan Peninsula. I mean, Mike was a week ahead of the time. He's like, "Hey guys, just heads up. Here's this hurricane that is probably going to be pretty devastating." And I don't even think it was a tropical storm yet at that point. So the wheels started turning about a week prior, and I think it was we were scheduled to get the eye of the storm here in north central Georgia, like way up, up in the mountains here. And, 6 a.m. came for that time, and we really just got some light wind damage and then saw a lot of what was happening, I guess, through Twitter. But I think those accounts were, coming in a couple of days later. We didn't really understand exactly what had happened in that area because the area was completely wiped out. No cell service, no power, no water. None of that. I mean, they were literally transported back in time, almost 200 years, minus the fact that you've got some, combustion engines in the area that can start moving and doing some things like that. But in terms of communication and power, they were completely cut off. So
yeah, I remember early on there being like, well, why aren't more videos getting out? If it's really this bad, why aren't more videos getting out? And it's like because they don't have they don't have internet. Do you remember what that was like before cell phones and internet? Yeah, that's what we just went back to there.
Dude, it's so crazy. It's so crazy how fragile so many of the things, like so much of what kind of sustains the day to day really is. And really because of how centralized it is. Like it's so crazy that we think of, I guess not to take it back to fiat, but the fiat system and the way that we have quote unquote progressed or pushed growth through just indebting and trying to make things as big as we can in the name of efficiency is that we've killed robustness. We've killed resiliency in order to get efficiency, because robustness is not efficient. It's robust. It's redundant for the sake of surviving a storm, of surviving when the wind blows or when the unexpected happens. And it's somehow just like gotten totally lost in the conversation and lost in the economics, is that like we can't actually make genuine sense of trade-offs because the cost of resources are just completely they're just, the communication is completely non-existent. It's all disinformation basically in the economy.
Well, that's like one thing to that guy is like one of the interesting things around like the problem of centralization, especially around when you're talking about like government or military. From the outside, you never actually get any inkling of how inefficient the centralization platform is, because all you ever see is the surface area or the surface level activity, right? Whether it's the failure or the success, you only see the surface level. You don't see all the cogs in the background that are slipping and not meshing because of all sorts of other nonsense that is going on.
Yeah.
And I think to answer your question of kind of the origin of all this, I think we have to go back like months, maybe even up to a year. Average Gary in the chats, and Average Gary on Noster kind of let us know probably about a year ago about this thing called Meshtastic. And he was also pumping us to like start learning ham radio. So we had radio chats going probably about a year ago, guys studying for their ham radio license and learning about Meshtastic. And so in Nashville, me and Gary and a few other people kind of chipped
awesome.
into
so
like
way ahead of the game on that one.
Yeah. And that's why I'm saying like that's kind of the origin of a lot of what we did and our way of thinking leading up to this event. So like when we showed up to Nashville, we had, I think between me and Gary, we probably had 300 Meshtastic devices to sell to people.
Holy
and to
crap.
like we did a class on it in the BV Citadel at the conference. So really like we've been pushing that. We got 5 guys ham radio licensed at the conference, like really been pushing the communication thing. We've also been pushing reading the book 1 Second After, which is about an EMP attack on the United States where all electronics are wiped out. And
snap.
What do you do in that kind of situation? And so we've been distributing Meshtastics to like different, either selling them to people that want them or distributing them to people in our local communities to build up that resiliency, while pairing that with like a Faraday bag so you can store all this stuff in and secure it. So if something like that were to happen, we're ready to, like you said, you had a friend that you couldn't get comms with, and you just like, how do you know when you can't? The lack of communication and the lack of information is what causes a lot of people to panic. But if you can right away start communicating and sharing information, you cut down on that panic, because people know what's going on and they can start coordinating things and planning. Like, so communication is very important in that sense. And so to have already had all these devices ready to go with a little bit of knowledge and background on how they work and having set them up in some communities, it was like, oh, this is something that's going to be needed over there to get communications back up and running. And it's just, there's a saying that luck is the residue of preparation. And so because we were prepared and understood Meshtastic and ham radio and all this, we were very lucky to have kind of all these ducks in a row when Helene hit.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's so awesome. What was that was my immediate first thought too. And I was immediately looking outside of the fact that we, ran in just like went and filled up 2 grocery carts full of stuff when, we heard that a local church was making a delivery out there. But my first thought was always communication, because I think people often discount, or it just kind of gets pushed to the side, mostly because communication is so ubiquitous, that of just how critically important it is, and how much, if you do not have information, how many resources are wasted, how many get sent to the wrong place, how many like critical things aren't done, which so many other things may even depend on. Like, it just, like, information is so much, like, so critically important to get communication back up. And, I thought about, it was last Christmas, and I might do it this Christmas. Hopefully nobody listens to it, so they don't know their Christmas present. But
hopefully nobody listens to this episode.
Nobody's going to listen to this crap. Don't worry about it. I was thinking about, like, literally getting everybody in my family and, like, close circles a satellite phone, or one of the ones that lets you text through satellite. It basically gives you, like, SMS and, like, a couple other, like, base services.
Yep.
That you can, like, hang on you and you can just connect to your phone.
Interesting enough, Guy. When I pulled into the area for the first time, maybe within the week, it was the only thing that we could do was text through satellite. And so I think the iPhone 16,
interesting.
I'd just been fortunate enough to, we were up, for years and years to finally upgrade. And so we upgraded about the day before, which I was not really excited about, going into a disaster zone, having a phone that, didn't have a lot of things that needed to be on there. But, I pulled in to get gas at a gas station where you could only get $50 worth of cash, so go in, get $50, and then came out and it said, would you like to connect to satellite? And I was like, wait a second.
Shit, I didn't even know that.
In the upper
That's
part
of wild.
In the upper part of the iPhone, what happens is now you'll have a drop down and you can click on it. And basically what it's going to do is it's going to have you in a satellite, and it's going to tell you to turn in one direction or another until that thing turns green. And once it turns green, then you can start sending texts out through the satellite. That is the only communication that we had in that area. And it was obviously super painful, but also one of those things where you could at least let people know, hey, this is where I'm at. This is, we're all okay. This is critical information, whatever it was. And so, iPhone 16s, if you guys aren't aware, they've got.
I had no idea.
I think it started with the 15, actually.
Maybe
the satellite text in emergency with. Yeah,
that's actually great. I'm usually really annoyed by the control and the limitations that I have with iPhone, and I've been slowly making a shift towards Android, and I've been meaning to put graphene on. I had Calyx on it, but my brother has been using graphene for a while and kind of swears by it. But that's pretty crazy for a phone, especially just for emergency stuff. Like having that backup. Like, I mean, this is one of those things, is having some sort of a preparation. And there's so many different scenarios. It's like having had someone break into our room in Lugano. Like, it just makes me realize how unprepared I was for just that scenario. And it's funny, it's like, I didn't even, like, that wasn't even something that I thought was out of the realm of possibility. Like, as a Bitcoiner, you're always being like, okay, what's my attack vector and stuff. I've read articles about it, and like talked at links, like, what should you do? And then I didn't do it, like I had like really loose preparations or whatever. And then, like, there's a dude in my room and I'm like, well, son of a bitch, that should have been obvious,
Yeah.
But in that sense, like, what was the biggest challenge with setting up the Meshtastic? How quick, and do you even have like data on how many people were able to use it? Like, was it actually, tell me more about Meshtastic. What is this basically extending a Wi-Fi signal, or?
No, so it's 915 megahertz.
915,
and so
okay.
This is the open
so
band.
Real low megahertz.
Yeah, you can do any type of broadcasting on it. It's open for all sorts of experimentation and those kind of things. So what Meshtastic does is it connects to your phone through Bluetooth, And from there, what we're talking about is creating a wireless mesh repeating network. And so line of sight, depending on where you're at in elevation, we've done comm shots from 30 to 60 miles with just a standard little setup. It's crazy. Yeah, and that's the thing is because this is
low bands go a long way. Yeah,
low band. It's one of those really cool pieces that if you can just run a powered router or repeater at your house, which these little Meshtastic radios can be set up in client, they can be set up in repeater, router, combinations of all of these things. So the first thing you're trying to do is figure out, okay, well, how are we going to deploy this? And Jordan, obviously being a Green Beret, I worked with the Green Beret quite a bit when I was overseas. Their whole mission is force multiplication. It's just today their whole mission, but a large part of their mission is force multiplication. So basically, what you want to do is you want to find people who are movers and shakers in those communities, and then get those guys to where they are the people who can lift their community back up. And what was really interesting is, and Jordan probably speak to this a little bit more than I can, but Robin Sage is the culminating event for the Green Beret in Western North Carolina before they become Green Beret. Basically, they're put into these, pretend situations where there's a let's just call it a valley. Let's give them, and I'm sure it can be larger than that, Jordan, but they have this area. They go out and it's a non-permissive environment, which means in they're training in a place where people would likely kill them. So, obviously North Carolina in real world, now we've got a permissive environment. So, the deck's already stacked in our favor, but they also have this cadre of resources in the area. So just, a network of people. And this is not just, one or two, this is like multiple different groups of people who all help in training the Green Beret through Robin Sage. And to have those guys in that area, thick as thieves with the networks that they already have, it's like, if there was an area where this was going to happen, this was the perfect area for this to happen. So our goal, and I think what the first text I sent to these guys about going up was, listen, my goal is to go up there and find some veterans that can be force multipliers, and we're going to get these guys power, we're going to get them communication, and then those guys are going to be the guys that lift them back up. And while I'm traveling there, Jordan reached out to one of his buddies, or Jordan, why don't you take it up from there? Because I think that getting hooked up with the Christian Rangers is a big part of how we were able to get out there and do some things early on.
Yeah, the intel sergeant on my team when I was in, when he got out, he was doing some disaster relief stuff. So I was like, hey man, do you know anybody in the area? And he gave me 3 names. And the second guy I called was Micah from the Christian Rangers. And he was like, yeah, we got a bunch of Green Berets. We've got a Delta Force medic. We've got all these guys here, like rocking and rolling. We're basically like, we're running all these missions every day to help get people power and supplies. And we're collecting intel, both like from human intelligence, like talking to the people, but then also open source intel, stuff online to figure out where, continue to find new people that need help. And just having this conversation with him, I was like, okay, you're who we need to link up with because you're already on the ground, like running these operations, and you've got all this going on. Let's come in and help amplify what you're doing. I was like, Shane, go meet up with this guy. I think this is where we want to be, and like feel it out. And I don't know if Shane had even been there a full 24 hours yet before he was like, yeah, we're in the right spot.
Yeah. So within, I got in late on a Sunday, and Monday morning went operational. Went out to this guy's house. He's got a flat, piece of land in an elevated position, which flat is very hard to find out there in Western North Carolina for a lot of reasons. But and then to have an area that we could kind of had limited access to at the same time, so that we could bring choppers in. So this was an HLZ, helicopter landing zone, for those of you guys that don't speak. And went up there. I had everything in loaded for bear in the truck, including a Starlink, Meshtastic, a couple of gen sets and things like that. And lo and behold, the guy that was running this place just happened to be a Green Beret who was not associated with us at all. Right? He lived in the area. I said, "Hey man, you could use some power and some internet," and and he's like, "Yeah, we definitely could." So his wife ended up running the HLZ, what we called HLZ Zombie, during the day, and he actually was running a private airport over in Avery on during the day on his side. So he's got access to both fixed and rotary wing aircraft, and we've got rotary wing aircraft here. Wow. So we basically just gave those guys a couple of mesh tastics. We got them spun up on Starlink at both the airport and his house, and got those guys power up and running within the first day. So wow. In terms of force multiplication, we found the diamond in the rough within literally matter of minutes of being operational. And so that that translated awesome. that translated very quickly. We had the guys from the North Carolina National Guard and the UH-60s come in and land, Blackhawks again. So they came in and landed. We gave them a class on Meshtastic, basically made airborne repeaters out of a lot of those guys with Meshtastic, because what we're working on now is, this is still very.
Does that work literally on the fly, like just like basically when moving through an area? Because that's crazy.
Yeah, so basically what you're trying to do, because it was early and there's no comms, is get as much of this distributed as possible. So we put it in the Air National Guard, so they're flying during the day, which is great. So they're going to have some coverage sometimes at least. And then we got over to the airport and we started talking with the search and rescue guys, the guys who were actually on the ground in the haulers. And now what you've got is, an airport which has tons of pilots that are, going to be roving in the area. So we're starting to hand them out into the pilots and the search and rescue from the airport. And that's, right away, we kind of established ourselves in that area, especially with the guys from the Christian Rangers as an asset, so to speak. And so, yeah, from there it was just game on. And I'll stop there.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. It's still also just crazy to me in general, just the fact that the Meshtastics work on like while you're moving, and that repeater is actually a beneficial thing to put on a helicopter. I'm curious though, how difficult was the setup? And I guess when you have a disaster scenario, like when you're trying to recover for something, it's one of those things that it's easy to put off or dismiss something as unimportant until like something happens where you can't ignore it. But it's like trying to get people to care about decentralized tech or Meshtastic or Bitcoin or anything when everything's normal is an impossibility. Like nobody gives a flying F, right? But how difficult was it? So much of the conversation is usually around, oh, it's complicated and people can't set it up. They don't want to, it's too difficult for normal people to have their own Meshtastic antenna or whatnot. But how difficult was it really? Like when somebody actually had the motivation and they're like, no, we need this. How difficult was it to get them to learn how to set that up and then give it to somebody else and teach it? You know what I mean? Like to spread that from one location to many.
So I was handing these out to like my bourbon night crew, like a local group here. We meet up and do a bourbon night, and it's mostly a bunch of older guys. And I just show them like, here's the device. You pair it to your phone. Even these boomers and whatnot, they know how to pair something to Bluetooth for the most part.
They got their AirPods, right?
Yeah. So if you can do that, then it's just, all right, here's a couple of the settings that you might need to set up on initial setup. Fairly simple to do. And I think it even tells you in the app, like, hey, do this, dummy. And then it's after that, it's really just text messaging. And it's like your phone is just the interface. So you pair it with this device and you're just using it to text message. It's very dummy proof.
Simple.
I mean, we had a Marine and an officer like putting together computer and radio things, like two people who are kind of known for breaking things, especially when it comes to communications. And we figured it out. So.
Yeah, small, tiny connections with boards, like we figured all this out. And if, a guy with these mitts can, sit there and throw things together at,
my fingers are too fat. I don't understand.
That literally happened.
I think under headlamps the first night. I think one of the biggest, points in your, kind of in your question there is like, how do you sell this to people, right? And, instead of walking up going, hey, I'm from Bitcoin Veterans, like, and having people just check out immediately, right? Like, it was like, hey, listen, we're a bunch of dorks that specialize in freedom tech, which means communications and things like that. And so as soon as they hear the word freedom tech and they're, Western North Carolina, red, white, and blue is just oozing right out of their veins. They're like, oh, we got dorks here that are into freedom tech that understand how to get us back up and running on communications because, seriously, people are so starved for information. And I don't think this is something that people have thought about is as soon as the lights go out and the power's gone and there's no comms, there's phone is, now a brick. There's withdrawals going on. There's literally withdrawals going on. And so you start to see these guys kind of like come back to life and you're like, you can get our communication back up. What does that mean? Like who can I communicate? How do we do this? And now all of a sudden they're interested. And the fact that it's freedom tech is they're like, good, they ain't from the government, so it's also, a nice piece for them is, you start saying things like decentralized, nobody can, co-opt this thing. And there's 8-channel encrypted messaging that's available. And here's how you do that. And you show them all the different features. It doesn't take more than 10 minutes to get somebody up and running on this. And then all of a sudden they're part of something. They're part of a network. They're part of, being a node or being a client. It's kind of cool to watch.
That's awesome. What's the main way that you've powered all the devices? Do you have solar panels with some of these? Are they sitting out in like by themselves? Or you mostly just find locations that have power to set them up on? Is there like an alternative or a couple of different ways that y'all are doing that?
Yeah, the main way would just be like the battery pack that is in, like, we had guys print off some 3D printed cases that we put the device and a battery pack in, like a little antenna. That would be the main way. And then you can plug it in with a USB-C. Obviously, that's if you have power. But for the node that we went in, or the repeater that we went and set up on Big Bald Mountain that reached and connected this huge chunk of the Southeast, that we connected it to a solar panel. So it was just being powered all the time.
It also helps when we're passing out generators at the same time. Yeah. So that helps.
Yeah. How much power does it take? Like for the solar panel or whatever, was that mostly just keeping it running?
A couple of AAAs will run this thing. I guess if you left it on with just a couple of AA's, it would last you a day or two.
Wow.
If you didn't have continued power going to it. But yeah, they don't take very much power at all for the distances that we're talking about.
Yeah, I was about to say for the distance, because usually if you're getting like 2.4 gigahertz or 5 gigahertz for high power and you want to get like real distance out of it, that's going to take a lot. But I guess that 900 megahertz really saves you. What was the makeup of people? Like, you're talking about like Black Hawk helicopters come in, like, is a lot of this people's personal helicopters that people come in, and then some is the military, some is FEMA, like some, like, what was the span of people that you saw on the ground? Like, was FEMA there? Was FEMA in the way? Was FEMA just not relevant? Like, give me the rundown of the
yes to all.
One word answers from here. No. Yeah, out of the
they were there, airport, they were in the way, and they were irrelevant.
Yeah. Wow. At the Avery Airport, which is kind of the largest place that I ever saw operating, it was mostly civilian. There was no real presence from the feds or the military, so to speak. You had a bunch of people who flew in their own personal aircraft and were, making deliveries and running, all these supplies out to HLZs in coordination around the area. So it was mostly civilian. On the ground, I'd say he had a pretty interesting mix, but definitely dominated by veterans, right? Like there was just so much veteran activity in this area. And it's not to say, I'm not grateful for all the volunteers that showed up. Everybody that showed up out there is incredible. But obviously, there was just a bunch of dudes. It was like a reunion for the guys that, signed up after 9/11 to come back out and get together. Great networking event. But, and then you had a bunch of, churches and, those people who were running in as well. So it was everything you probably thought it was going to be, running towards Western North Carolina, not to be cliche.
I think the word dominated by veterans still doesn't do it justice, though, because it felt like out of like 10 people that you're interacting with, probably 7 or 8 of them were veterans in some scope or capacity. It's just like, good Lord, dude. Like it was, I mean, especially considering the damage and the loss of life out there, it was like basically being in a war zone at that point.
That's so crazy. It's so crazy to think about too, just because, that's kind of the demographic that's used to thinking in that mindset, that can get up and be like, oh, I can be useful in a very obvious way in this situation. Whereas most people go through life like with, styrofoam on the corners of everything, and they don't think about when stuff breaks or when stuff. I mean, I was shocked. I'm not a veteran. I'm not like, I haven't done like anything crazy, but I worked construction for a really long time, so I just kind of know the basic operation of things and how to build stuff and that sort of thing. And I like to think that I can help out in those situations whenever I can. But I remember just being utterly shocked when I went to college and got out of my small town where there's a bunch of rednecks, like a ton of people that I grew up with went to the military. Right. I went to college and they were trying to hang something. I don't even remember what it was anymore, but it was something in the common room just for like fun. And everybody was like awkward and weird about using a screwdriver. And I was like sitting in a group of like 8 or 9 people. And I was like, are you motherfuckers kidding me right now? Like, can nobody like get up and use a screwdriver? He's like, can you hand me this, please? Because like I hurt right now. I am physically in pain. So like in the context of veterans, it makes sense that they're the ones that would immediately stand up and be like, this is a situation I know, because like they're put in a place to be trained to do that in all over the world, so that's kind of nuts. And especially in a place where veterans are also happen to be our largest homeless population and have the biggest problem when it comes to occupations after getting out of the military. Like it seems to be the endless conversation of like, oh yeah, we have the worst homeless problem in the world. Bunch of veterans. It's like, well, shit. How the hell have we done that? How have we managed to take basically what might be our best backup plan and sit it in a pile of trash on the side of the road? I don't know. It's a crazy thing. I like. Have y'all experienced like what's kind of y'all's perspective on that? Like, do y'all know like old friends and other veterans or whatever that have had a really hard time? Or is that maybe just expand on that from y'all's perspective?
I mean, I'll go first because I have like the least amount of experience here between these two. But I know a couple buddies that aren't necessarily homeless, but they are so afflicted by what they experience that they're kind of just scraping by. Like they're doing enough to, I don't even know if I would say be comfortable, but they can justify the level of comfort that they have as like being enough, and maybe that's right for them. Maybe it's not, but, the one thing that I did want to mention, guys, like to kind of like how did we allow this to get here? I mean, it's pretty basic. Like the government looks at its people and particularly its soldiers as just tools. Once the tool is broken down enough, and it's a plastic economy, it's like throw it away, replace it with the next thing. Like there's no such thing as durable goods in America anymore, which is unfortunate, and that includes the soldiers.
Yeah, it's
which there's such an easy fix. Like if you listen to, I think it was when Elon was on Rogan recently, they were talking about psilocybin and how that can be used to solve a lot of problems. And Rogan was like, if there's one message I want to get to Trump, it's like, let's legalize this or at least make it accessible for veterans to get this kind of treatment. And that's something that all of us, but specifically Shane, is really working on. And it really is kind of this like magical tool to fix a lot of the problems. And like, that's why that you have a lot of this homeless problems with veterans, is because a lot of them have come back broken and they're not able to get sufficient treatment, even for what, maybe is available and legal. Let alone like treatment that will actually help them. And when you realize like the reason it was made illegal was because it was a bunch of like anti-war protesters, because their minds had been opened up to the idea of peace and like being connected with their fellow man, that they had to get rid of this thing so that we could start these wars, continue them. But then also now you just made illegal the thing that will fix your veterans when they come back.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
I think it was actually Joe Rogan it was an episode of Joe Rogan that got me like going down that rabbit hole for a few days. But you said Shane has been focused on that. Like, can you expand on that?
Yeah,
because I'm sure a lot of people hear, what, drugs? You crazy lunatic! You're just a druggie.
Yeah.
Well,
it's funny.
Why is this related?
Psilocybin, or what I think a lot of people would probably know them by as magic mushrooms out there. They should be first and foremost regarded as kind of a sacred technology and not just a drug, right? And if there's a gateway to sobriety, I think psilocybin is probably it. And I think, obviously, other issues aside, the culture of the military is one of alcohol and violence and just, alpha testosterone and everything else. I kind of encountered problems with the VA back in 2015. I think that's the last time I went to a place, and just anecdotally, they asked me to take some blood. First thing in the morning, I think I had downed a Chick-fil-A sandwich, and I was like, dude, my blood's going to look like gravy. And they're like, no, you'll be fine. So they went and they took my blood. And I didn't really report any like post-traumatic stress. I was extremely high functioning, and but I had no emotional like capacity. None. I was just like, hey, if it's not on mission, then then it's gonna be it's a liability basically. And that's kind of the way that I first started to see that's how the government sees us, right? Is if you're an asset, you're an asset. If you're a liability, then you're going to cost them. And so what's the best thing that the government can do in terms of their books? It's get the liabilities off of, the liability column. And I think that's, why a lot of us in this community were like, no, I'm not getting any COVID shot, because what you see was an aging population of boomers that is now going from, being tax cattle to being tax absorbers, and that's a liability status. So what do you have to do? Get rid of them, just like you did with the veterans. Anyway, I digress. So they sent me, in less than a couple of days, I had some cholesterol medicine. I had some SSRIs sent to me, and
oh my God, because of one blood test?
Of one blood test, there was no, there was no instructions or anything. It was just on the bottle, here, take this, this many times a day, take this many times a day. And I was like, dude, I'm done.
The interventionism, being like, you can like boil somebody's health down to like 3 data points that you got at one time. Like you could literally like tell them something nervous, like this is a very important test, and the test will read different, you know? Like what is wrong with you? That's so crazy. That's so fucking crazy to me.
When you look at what they do prescribe, right? They prescribe cholesterol medicine. They prescribe, things for high blood pressure. They prescribe SSRIs like it's going out of style. And then, on top of that, they're going to give you, whatever type of painkiller you might need that's going to get you, addicted to painkillers. And then they're going to give you, drugs so that you can go to the bathroom, basically, because you're going to get stopped up. And so
because you just got packed full like 6 other things that is going to just make your digestive system stop working, probably.
Yeah. So I said there's got to be an easier, better way to deal with all this kind of stuff. I kind of went down the cannabis route, at night, to just sleep, and then as I was getting into jiu-jitsu, one of the guys in my gym was a very experienced guy. I would consider a shaman. He will never call himself that. And he took me out, and we did a small mega dose with 2.5 grams, which for you guys, if you guys aren't tracking, 2.5 grams is not a micro dose. It's considered a mega dose, but it's not like a hero's dose at 5 grams. And so that was kind of my entry point. And what I experienced just during that session was next to God. And I mean that, like, spiritually awakening to a certain degree. I repeated the event, a couple times. We went out, we did 5 grams, and that's where things started to really break loose. And, after 5 grams, he was like, look, man, you can handle this kind of stuff on your own. You've got the wherewithal and the mindset to be able to do this in a really positive fashion. So I started going into some higher doses by myself on the mountain, and what was revealed to me was vision, and I mean literally vision. This is your purpose in life, and this is what you need to be doing. And so, I think that's one of those things where if it's administered correctly and by the right people, for the right people, because this is not for everybody. And I do mean that is like, listen, if you're curious about this, the last thing you should be doing is going out and partying. You should not be mixing this with anything. You should probably be fasting for a day before you go. You should be in a safe, natural place. And, and there's a lot of precautions that kind of go with that. So it's not something that you just kind of willy-nilly get into. There's a lot of plan and preparation for it. But from, what I've experienced and, now all the guys that I've had, come out and go through this, I mean, you guys can speak to it, but I've seen, this tectonic shift because of the visions that said, hey, go do this and have Bitcoiners kind of lead the way on this as well, like Bitcoin veterans. So it's one of those paths that I can't speak highly enough about. And if we were doing this more on a decentralized, larger scale, I think we start giving guys passion. We start giving guys mission. We definitely, grab that empathy that they were missing and plug it back into them. And at the same time, you've got, a group of people who are working on a decentralized economy that have no quit in them. And they're, it's all about liberty and freedom. So now you've got this, you've basically just supercharged everything that we're doing. I think that's probably one of the reasons why Bitcoin veterans has been, as successful as it has since the very beginning.
And I get it. Like, if I was the regime, if I was the establishment, I wouldn't want anybody tapping into this, because we're going to upend everything they're doing. I think just a handful of people tapping into this have a disproportionate effect on the entire ecosystem of our nation and in the world. You start doing this on a large, like Shane said, you start doing this on a large decentralized scale. It's like global revolution, peacefully.
Well, and like the thing I was going to add too is, like, when you're talking about treating this stuff, particularly in veterans, which predominantly tend to be male, you're running into a series of, like, a nexus of problems here. We've already touched on the government stuff, but something that Shane was kind of touching on with, like, his example of, like, all the medications he got from one blood test. All those medications none of them are providing solutions. They're just masking up.
They're just covering up. They're just trying to get the metric back down, which is it's just so stupid.
it's not healthcare. Like I've been trying to recommend people stop referring it to that as a healthcare system. It's the symptom management system. That's all it is. And like what doing like a protocol or a therapy like this does is it actually like starts to fix or heal like the core of the problem. And it's doing it in a masculine way, which is what our veterans and our soldiers need. Because like you look at the therapy industry,
it's giving them control.
Well, it's patently feminized.
Oh, you're talking about the industry. I was talking about the alternative is giving them this way to correct themselves.
You're not wrong. Yeah. You're not wrong with what you said as far as like taking the power away. But particularly for veterans and for men, like dealing with anything as far as like spiritual or emotional, the solutions for men aren't that we need to hear that we're loved. Like maybe that's true for some guys out there, but for the majority of guys that I've come across that have these kinds of issues, I tend to be kind of a magnet. Like I get drawn to them to like help them kind of like pull stuff out. What tends to be helping guys get out of these situations for like our veterans and our PTSD is helping our fellas find their power again. Right. And a lot of times that power can come from a community like Bitcoin veterans, or a lot of times that power comes from just being able to see like what they're capable of mentally, spiritually, whatever. And because like that's really kind of like the core of it is like the psilocybin stuff or this decentralized medicine, like Jack Cruz talks about, or like what we're talking about here is like, it's helping just get the power back. Right. Because whether it was the U.S. military took it or Big Pharma took it and the Koch brothers or whoever it is, it's just. Yeah.
Man, it's crazy. I actually just saw something about this the other day, which I thought was like really insightful, I guess is the word. But it was a post about, women think that, like we've been led to believe that when men have like a disconnect or have some sort of problem or they're depressed or they feel lost, is that they need to talk about it and that they need to sit down and like talk about their emotions and all of this stuff. And it's like, no, that's how people who lead by feeling like need to deal with their problems. And that's predominantly like across the board, that is a feminine mode of coping with a problem, is to talk it out, is to share it with other women. And anybody who's actually spent any time with a woman knows that that's pretty much how it is. But a man needs literally the opposite, not to talk about it, but to go do something. So
you're saying this is a foreign concept in Bitcoin then?
Yeah. But
everybody's getting girlfriends now.
Everybody's getting girlfriends. You talking about it? We're at 80K, baby. But that a man needs to go do something, go build something. It's so funny. Like that's how I've dealt with every like major thing in my life is I just get lost in doing something. Like I just work 10-hour, 12-hour days and just go do it. And I think the piece there that I think also aligns with the whole psilocybin, the magic mushrooms and everything element is that women are more likely to gravitate toward wanting love and know that they kind of have that that they're giving life, and there's an important piece of them that is relevant to giving life and nurturing. And men want to have a purpose. Men need a purpose. And so many of the men that I grew up with who did go into the military, I felt like did so because they felt like they didn't know what the hell they were supposed to do. They went there because they thought like, okay, well, this is Jordan, because like I'm looking for a purpose, and it gave them that. And then to think about how much more damaging it is to those people specifically when afterward you give them this burned pathway in their mind of PTSD, of like this awful thing that they now have to deal with, and then throw them away. like a broken tool to basically take, okay, well, we've masked this problem for the period of time in which you felt like you were useful here, and now we've left you with 10 times the problem and the same hole that we left you with when this started, and we've just added a bunch of damage on top of it, for the sake of that. And that kind of having that there may be a drug, drugs, it's an arbitrary term, everything's a drug, but that there's this substance that can potentially break those pathways in the mind and kind of give you a clean slate by just overstimulating all of it, so that you're not trapped in that same cycle of pain and self-defeating thought process. It's just wild to see it all, and it certainly is, I think, far more relevant, generally speaking, to men, because I think that's like the big thing is men need a purpose, and that's not recognized enough. We've been led by this talk about your feelings mantra and mindset for a long time, and I think we need to clarify. I think we need to be more specific about what we need.
Oh, I definitely agree. And like the one I was trying to chime in earlier, and I'm glad you didn't stop, because like I've mentioned it to Shane and Jordan, I'm really bad about like interrupting when there's something.
Dude,
I really
me too.
Wanna, but
me too, man. You and me both.
One thing that's really important about we started off talking about Helene, and now we're into like a male therapy and psilocybin conversation.
It's all interlinked.
Yeah. The one thing that I wanted to add is that, and this is all like me just observing, but one thing that is interesting, particularly about men and young men, and the needs of the individual male to basically find security in himself, right? Because like that's kind of what you were talking about, guys. Like women find security by talking about their feelings and having that shared with other women and other members of their community, so everybody understands like what's going on, so they feel secure, right? Men tend to need that security coming from within, right? Or even from their brotherhood, right? From like, it's kind of like a mixture of the two. One thing that you'll notice about young men, basically as soon as puberty kicks in, is when we start naturally manifesting, producing our den, right? Our den or our dungeon. Like the teenage boy will all of a sudden, like as soon as puberty kicks in, like parents are just like, yeah, it's like he turned 14 or 15 and now he won't come out of his room. Well, the reason for that is that what you
What's
mentioned, Guy. Yeah. Well, I mean, besides that, like the hormones
Nothing
and everything.
Good. Nothing good.
Yeah. But what a lot of us guys need, and Guy, you kind of like alluded to it, but I don't know if like you really kind of like understood really what you were like getting at, was that and that's not I can insult to you or anything, but like,
no, I'm curious. Continue.
when we have a problem that we need to solve within ourselves, we remove ourselves from our environment, right? Like you pull yourself away to go into solitude to process. And that's something too, especially with like the male, like the masculine culture, like kind of like revitalization and what's going on in the US around demonization of masculinity, is that a lot of the country, both men and women, don't understand that like men have to remove themselves from the situation for an extended amount of time to process the emotions and everything that's going on, because we are not led by our emotions. We're led by logic and rationale. And the logic and rational thing to do is, if you're getting spiked with emotions, whether it's PTSD or you're having an argument with your significant other, is that like men are put into a situation of where it's like, okay, well, like you want the emotions to come out, but I don't even understand my own emotions. So I'm going to back off, remove myself, figure out what's going on, reinsert myself into the environment, and be able to kind of like explain what's going on.
Yeah.
Dude, that was...
You kind of have to like build a frame. No, I totally agree. Like you have to like remove yourself. I go off and I'll just think about something for like 4 hours. Like,
yeah, and that can be a hike for 4 hours, or you can be deadlifting like me for like 2 hours, and like whatever it is, it's something that you as an individual need to stimulate your body, which activates your neurons in your spinal cord and your brain so you can like think better, right? Because like, I mean, when any of us are on spaces, a lot of us are pacing because the physical movement stimulates neuronal firing, which helps you think and process better.
Yeah.
That's really good, Mike. I hadn't pictured it from like that perspective, but like specifically since getting back from North Carolina, I've only recently, like within the past week, kind of gotten back into my like routine, like going to F3 workouts and being more active in the chats and stuff. And I was just kind of like shutting myself off from a lot of things because it was both things we had seen and all. I mean, we can get into this more too, but there's so many more layers of what's going on in North Carolina.
Yeah.
That when I got back home, I was like, man, I just want to like spend time with my family and be appreciative of like what we have. Because we had like North Carolina and everything that's going on there. We've got this freaking election that is finally over now. Like there was just like so many things kind of going on in the world that it was like, man, I just want to like kind of cut myself off from a lot of this. And to some degree you can't, because it's like, man, there's still like a fight to be had. But I've only in like the last week kind of gotten back into my like social routine. And I hadn't really pictured that that's probably why. Like I've got a lot of things to process that I'm just like, let's cut out the things that are superfluous and let me just focus on like what's important.
Yeah.
Well, and that's a lot of the value. And that, I'll bring it back so we can talk about some of the Helene stuff, because like that's a lot of the value of us like going out and helping, particularly Micah and the Christian Rangers, was that like when all three of us got out there, like that was like the first thing we told Micah and his team is like, hey, you guys have been out here for a while. You need to take a break. Like we understand your mindset and the go, but you can't. Like you can't just go forever. Like you're not the Energizer Bunny as much as we all like want to think that we are. And in order to keep going on, you have to remove yourself intermittently from the environment and from the situation to allow yourself to process and recharge so you can immerse yourself back into the environment and keep the mission going and like keep saving lives and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. On that, I'm really curious about I mean, not that this is a fun part of the conversation, but like what has been so on social media, I've had a lot of people say that the death count is a whole lot higher than what they're reporting. And
it has to be.
Well, it's a fact. So we spoke with some, let's just call them small town firefighters out there. And a lot of what is coordinated through search and rescue is coordinated through the fire departments. Those guys are talking about, tractor trailers, I mean, full of dead bodies, man. And the issue is Jesus unless they're Christ. Unless they're tagged and identified, then they're not actually counting them. And so what you've got is tractor trailers that have partial remains, which, are not identifiable at all. And so they're just not counting them. And that's obviously, a big piece of that. So yeah, they're, when we were talking, it was a magnitude of, 100 times what they thought they had, because, I think by the time we left, they had really only identified maybe 20 people ish so far. And like the fire department's in there going like, multiply that by 100. And that's what you've got filling a lot of these containers.
And you've also got, think about like how they did the numbers for like COVID and stuff. Like, there's certain deaths that they're not going to attribute to it because, I don't know, they want the number to stay low. They don't want it to look as bad. But like just while we were there, like within a couple days, we got reports from locals that like 15 people had died of hypothermia the night before. And are those being counted towards like the death from Helene? Or is that Helene. Just like, people just died because people die, which is true. So like, but where do you... Obviously, if you have 15 people in one night dying of hypothermia, that is directly related to Helene.
Yeah.
That was in the first 48 hours of all three of us being there.
That's a fraction of what your total is as well.
That's
right?
literally what you heard too.
Yeah, that's how many they know of.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are non-deniable deaths, basically. And that's what you have to start understanding is what they're doing is they're just buying time so that when, the news cycle, forgets about it, and then they come back later and actually publish a report that nobody's going to be paying attention to because it's not, what's hot right now in the legacy media, then, they'll kind of just, go right over it and not really address, oh yeah, it was actually somewhere around 2,100 people that died or 5,000 people that died. And, then all the, secondary and tertiary effects of, hypothermia, or, now people getting pneumonia because of, black mold in the area, and all the different chemicals that have been, brushed up in the dust of cleanup, from there are literally valleys where towns don't exist, where chemical factories were washed downstream, and now the entire town where it was is a hazmat zone. And so, I mean, yeah, not fun stuff, but literally happened over in Western North Carolina in multiple cases.
To add one more data point onto what Shane just gave too, is like our last day there, we had driven along Highway 197 right along Big Toe River. And from what we could see from the evidence of like the environment, the landscape out there, was that the river rose by almost 30 to 40 feet. And when you think about the amount of soil and sediment that was carried down there, we have no idea how many bodies are underneath all the deposited soil and everything in the river and the valleys.
I mean, I was in so many videos of just like 5 feet worth of mud in somebody's house.
Oh, yeah.
Just like, It's like the amount of things and people and just stuff that's just buried. Like, you've changed the whole landscape, and every road in Western North Carolina is built along a waterway because that was the easy way to go. Yeah. Like, and they all just became part of the waterway.
And then you mix in like the plastics companies like Shane was talking about, and whether those chemicals break down organic material, you may never find, like, regardless, even if you go digging, you may never find the remains that you're looking for.
Yeah.
And what I was going to throw in there is I'm west of Knoxville, right? But all that water is coming through down to the lake that we're by. And all that mud and everything, like, there was a distinct line of where all that was coming from North Carolina and East Tennessee, and then like a river that came from further west, and you could see the line
just
of
different
mud.
Color.
Yeah, completely different color. So all that, like, just think about how far all those chemicals and stuff are being dispersed and what the long-term ramifications are. And of course, they don't want to talk about, if you don't even talk about the epicenter, then you're definitely not talking about
the secondary and tertiary. Yeah.
And which I think is something really important. Kind of like a little epiphany I had last night was to basically like start some kind of nonprofit group to help fund some independent journalists to like, specifically, like, we're going to pay you to like continue to stay focused on this area, continue to write articles about what's happening in North Carolina and everything that's resulting from Helene, because like, just because these articles may not get, published in like big news outlets, but like, let's keep writing and reporting on this, and like, let's work up to potentially writing a book about the story of Helene. And there's continuing to be more information that's going to come out. And this needs to be kind of collected. And it's not just Helene. Like, this is what Bitcoin can do to fix like the whole journalism industry, right? Like, we still need a free press. We need people out there going out and reporting on things. And for good reason, the corporate media is being defunded because nobody's listening to them because they continue to lie. But that doesn't mean like journalism in general needs to go away. Like, we still need people out there reporting on stuff, and we still want.
Well, it's just that we realized that the corporate media wasn't journalism. To the contrary, of like, we don't need journalism to die. We need journalism to finally exist again. Like, we have just lost it
to be free and independent. And I think Bitcoin can facilitate that, to where like, hey, we're going to send you some Bitcoin to help like fund you while you're writing these articles and books and stuff. But look, I've already sent it to you. It's yours. I can't control like what your narrative is now and how you like spin things. if you get something wrong, you're not going to continue to be funded for the next project. Like, I think it keeps people honest, but it also helps find the truth. And when we talk about like Bitcoin fixes this, okay, until somebody goes in and like fixes it, how does it fix it?
Yeah. That's one of the big things. You know, it's so easy to get lost in platitudes and mottos and stuff. But you have to expand on what that means. Like, Bitcoin fixes this because it removes this apparent, the government and you can just print your way out of the problem. That this default, someone else is going to take care of it. Let me push off the responsibility. Yeah. So Bitcoin fixes this just because it incentivizes us to take care of it ourselves. That's how it fixes it. So if you're just saying Bitcoin fixes this and not doing anything, Bitcoin doesn't fix it until you realize that it's not going to happen until you do something. Because that's the only way it fixes it, is because it's going to incentivize you eventually to realize that that's just a fucking motto. And you have to get up off your ass and actually do something.
Yep.
That's why Bitcoin Veterans, I think, has been extremely successful, because
100%. You guys
got a bunch of action-oriented guys who are like, here's our plan. Anybody want to throw darts at it? Great. Let's take, whatever the fixes are, and then let's just go make mistakes fast and insert ourselves, because without action, none of this takes place.
Yeah, 100%. That was one of my big awakenings too, going back to one of the things you were talking about, just in journalism and stuff, is kind of my trip down the libertarian cypherpunk sort of rabbit hole shortly before I found Bitcoin, was realizing that it was all PR, that the body count is just going to be whatever is most beneficial to them, whether it's too big or too small. It's not about accuracy. It's about what's useful. And, whether they talk about what's happening downstream, it's whether or not it's useful to them to put in some sort of policy or get more subsidies or whatever. And if that's not it, then you're just not going to hear about it. It's literally a giant PR firm. They've centralized the self-interested incentive so that it's only about their self-interest. And everybody else, all of the other peoples and all of the people who are actually concerned about the area. That's one of the things that just drove me crazy, is FEMA, hearing reports of FEMA getting in people's way, telling people to stand down. Like, I watched one of the videos of a guy who said I think he was in Tennessee and he was planning on heading that way. And he had a drone that was like one of the top of the line infrared drones to be able to scan and like look for people in the area at the most critical time, when you have 3-4 days to really find those people before that's it. You don't have a very big window. And he was explicitly told to not go in the area. And like, the arrogance to think that some giant centralized federal government organization is going to care more than the people an hour away who can drive there and find people who are probably one step removed from their personal community, from their social circle. Like, the people who go there on, like, my connection to this, we go to the mountains every single summer, sometimes twice a year. We love it out there. It's just such a cool area. We have all our favorite little shops, and the people that we see once a year, they were like, hey, like it just. And to think of how much damage has happened, and to think that FEMA would prevent, like, that the federal government would try to monopolize that, as if they could possibly care, as much as the people who are actually here.
That's something we told like the locals that we were working with. Like, we were like, look, we're not going to be here forever. Like, everything we're doing here is to help get you on your feet, because anybody that tells you that they're going to be here and help you out forever is lying. And even if they could do it, they wouldn't have your best interests at heart. So yeah, we're here to help you, but like, realize we're here to get you on your feet so that you can take over and do it, because at some point we have to go back home and take care of our communities.
Yep.
Yeah. That was one of the big things too, is when I was keeping up with y'all and seeing when y'all shifted gears and were like, we need to deliver hay to make sure that the animals and the farms up here can sustain and get through the next 3 weeks, 2 months, or whatever it is. I was like, man, that is the way. Because when you think about it in the whole ecosystem, it's so easy to think, okay, we need toothbrushes and we need toilet paper and we need all this like crazy short-term things to solve this, solve immediate needs. It's like, well, yeah, but that's not going to, like, this is going to be a 6-month, year, 2-year recovery. And we have to think about what those 6-month problems are. Can someone feed their cattle for the next 3 weeks? Like, is all of their grazing land now covered in mud, toxic mud to boot? And thinking about, like, that was the thing that, like, I had not been seeing people, and it's why I was holding back some of the funds, because I was like, I know there are longer term, more core functioning things to deal with. And I'm curious to hear, like, first off, what kind of got you guys on that perspective? Were there other people thinking in that way out there that you saw? And then also, right now, what do you think is the best place to put resources? Because I don't want it to get lost in my mind of, like, put it in the back of my mind or whatever. And just because I've been out of it with the conference and everything, and I'm finally getting back into things. But where's the immediate need today for that next long-term concern?
Yeah. I'll make this kind of my closing. You guys stick around as long as you like, but I gotta get out of here after this. I think you were right.
Good. We kind of wanted you to leave anyway.
So right. We can talk about the real stuff.
Michael slept.
Mike is like, I'm out of here. Fucking this sucks.
So we kind of assessed the same thing as, we went out there and we were extremely frugal with, the deploying of funds and equipment and everything else, but it was potent. And I think that's obviously, a sign of what happens when you understand how scarce Bitcoin is. One of the other things that we did was we put everything into Bitcoin. So obviously we're riding a wave right now where everybody's donations have, I think our purchasing power is up almost 40%. If that's what we were talking about earlier.
It's been ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, to be an organization that, is Bitcoin centric and is holding Bitcoin during this, just absolute, beginning of a bull market is going to give us more purchasing power to do more potent things over a longer time. And so we suspended, donations coming into Bitcoin veterans probably that second week we were up there, I think. And
October 18th, I think.
Yeah,
maybe
we were
a
like,
week.
Look, we've got about 1.6 Bitcoin, or at the time, I think it was, about $120,000 worth. And between, what we had seen and what we were able to do, we were like, this is going to sustain us through the next 6 months in terms of being very deliberate and taking these and pushing them to the right area. I'd say one of the things that we're going to be working on here in the near future, and I'm headed up Thursday to take another look. I think you have to have people who are on the ground, like people who are trusted on the ground, first 100%. And foremost, going, this is today's, analysis. Stand by for tomorrow, because it could shift, that rapidly. So right now, one of the biggest things that we need to do is get some tiny homes into the area. We're working on Operation Homestead with the Christian Rangers. A lot of, I think, what we are, pushing out there, I think what we've got the cost down to house a small family in one of these tiny houses is about $3,000.
Holy shit, that's crazy.
Yeah. So to be able to do this along with Christian Rangers and set this up, what we're now doing is, the work with the local communities, like the sheriffs and the, county commissioners, because a lot of these people, they don't want this, because now this is eating into more FEMA money that's coming down. So this is, one of the places I think we need the funding push. But, like I said, it's one of those things where, just stand by. We're going to continue to feed everybody what we can throughout this winter. The goal is to get as many people in the area through to spring as possible. Once spring hits, I think we're probably in a different zone. But for us, heat and health and housing, I think, are probably the three big areas that really need attention. So I'll definitely, debrief you guys when I'm back and let you know, where we're going to be moving a lot of this. But on that same front is Thursday, we're setting up a Bitcoin wallet for one of the best distribution hubs up there in Marion. And this guy, Jim, who is another, Army veteran, entrepreneur, took it upon himself, got a little tire warehouse. And then on top of it, now he's got a 500,000 square foot warehouse that he's going to be moving everything into. And
is that the resilient recovery?
Yeah, he's making he's making deliveries to his local neighborhood. So he's probably going to need some vans. He's going to need people to drive these vans, delivery and everything like that. So I can't think of better people that are already stood up, and we help stand up there to get behind and just hey, what do you need? Because you're obviously doing some really good stuff in that area. But Guy and guys, I gotta get appreciate everything you guys are doing. Guy and guys, yeah, you guys are. I mean, this audience out there, I've been part of it for a long time. I know the power of it, and just to be here and have this platform, we really appreciate it, Guy.
Hell yeah, man. Shane, thanks for coming on, man. Thanks for everything you guys been doing, man. Seriously. Yeah. Later, boss.
All right, now we can talk about the real stuff.
Yeah, fucking Shane. Jesus Christ. Yeah, so maybe actually same question to you guys. What do you think I feel like, because I want to keep contributing to this, and it's actually wild to see, I'm able to donate 5,000 of it to this specific thing. It's so nice having you guys there and then connected to other people directly, so I can just know where it's going. And I know there are multiple touch points from multiple different areas that like, oh no, yeah, this is actually happening. Look, here's some pictures from the area. That
is the hard thing. Cause even when Shane was on the ground and we were connected with the Christian Rangers, and I'm like hearing directly from people on the ground and trying to get them stuff, things shift so quick. So if I'm a couple 100 miles away and I'm trying to get what they say they need, but then a day, there's a lead time on everything to go buy something and then get it sent over there. It might take a week from point to point, especially at the beginning when things were real rough and roads were closed. Until you get out on the ground and then you actually go like recon, like, oh, this is where they said that they were going to start having hay delivered. And you get there and you're like, oh, this is out in the middle of nowhere. This is a pain in the ass to get to. A semi-trailer is not getting it. Like, this is not the spot. There's just little things like that make sense when you're just looking at a map or somebody's like telling you about it. But until you're there, you don't really know. But what I did want to touch on when you mentioned, the thing with the hay, it was amazing how we were getting hay from like all across the country. I mean, from Florida really? To Georgia, to Texas, to Ohio, like Virginia, like it was. And as me and Mike were leaving, heading back to my house at the end of our week there, we're seeing like tractor trailers and like just regular trailers just coming with tons of hay heading in that direction. And it's just coming from all over. And it's not like we were the only ones that thought of this and were coordinating it. Yeah. Like once the signal went out that this is what was needed, the entire nation, I think we even had people out in like California trying to get stuff out and
wow.
And just donating. I mean, most people just donating it for free, like paying for the transportation themselves too. And just like trying to get things out there. Like,
that's so cool.
I mean, as terrible as it was almost like, it was like that feeling on 9/11 when you had all these first responders like rushing up, staircases in a building that is about to collapse because there's still people in there and they're still like fighting, or even afterwards, like digging through the rubble to like find people. But this wasn't just like New Yorkers coming or like people in the local area coming to help out. This was the entire nation like coming together to help out on this massive devastation, but with a lot more. I mean, just think of like the communication and technology that existed, that didn't exist 20 years ago, or is much more robust now. And our ability to communicate and coordinate and get resources, like it's been again, it's terrible that all this happened, but it's been so uplifting to see people coming together and like, this is what can happen if the big centralization, the big government just gets the hell out of the way. Like, we are going to screw up here and there, but when you have a big organization doing everything in the wrong direction, you're guaranteed that it's all going to be screwed up. When you've got a bunch of decentralized nodes trying to figure out some things, we'll screw up here and there, and we'll adjust fire and we'll fix it. And so that we'll mitigate what goes wrong much quicker, but we will get resources to where they need quicker, faster, and for cheaper than they'll ever be able to do.
Yeah.
Well, like one other, there's another group here that's been a part of this, like with us since very early on, that I also wanted to kind of like give credit to, was Texas Slim and the Beef Initiative. They reached out, like when they saw like what we were doing. Yeah, they reached out to us and they started coordinating their own kind of like logistics system and distribution points to gather hay in Texas from across the Mississippi and get it over there. And then that's where, like, from that point, then Slim and his team, they had reached out to us and they're like, hey, like, we know you guys are helping out. Like, you're on the ground. Like, we want to be a part of this. Like, how do we help? And I was just like, all right, here's just this guy, just going to plug him in straight into like all like our group chats. So like, there doesn't need to be like, we're doing the exact opposite as far as like the government of like providing aid. They want all of their middlemen in between all this stuff so that they can control the flow of information, or flow of resources, flow of money. And we're just like, no, like, here's your man. Here's the group that where all the information is being circulated. You guys do everything else. Like, you have all the trucks, you have all the resources, you have all the men. Like, well, like, but we don't need to micromanage this. Like, you guys just go do your thing. And on top of that, to that point, like, one thing that I didn't like realize one problem that I didn't realize we were going to run into was, it's very surprising how hard it is to spend the amount of money that, the Bitcoin community has like provided to us to be able to provide support. And like Shane was getting at, and kind of like, what the early part of the conversation was getting at was, it's fascinating. Like, at first I was shocked at how hard it was to spend that money when you're trying to do it intelligently and efficiently. But then to think about it in the other direction, like, what in God's name could the government and these federal organizations be spending money on that is
$4 billion,
thousands of times more than what we have access to, and they're burning through it and like that? It's like, where is, like, just the waste is unfathomable.
They burn through multiple $1 billion just in their bureaucracy, man.
Yeah,
just in the people they pay to have a thing called FEMA.
Yep.
You know, like, and what was their budget, like 28 or something crazy?
Yeah.
So, what people don't, they'll throw out these numbers, and what most people don't realize is that, like, you know, however many billions of dollars is being spent on disaster relief, how much of that is going to pay the government employees? How much is it going to housing them, to feed them, yada, yada? That's a big chunk of the relief effort. And when you're doing things like that we're doing, where we're staying at places for free, we're paying for our own food because we would be doing that anyway. For the most part,
we're sleeping in incomplete construction sites.
Yeah, we're sleeping where, that's what I mean by, like, we're staying places for free. All of the money is going to actual relief efforts. And when you do that, I mean, between me and Shane, I mean, we made multiple trips to Lowe's, Home Depot, buying as many generators as we could, and multiple trips to Lowe's and Tractor Supply, buying like a ton of Carhartt jackets, gloves, hats, like all this stuff to keep people warm. I mean, multiple trips, just like a shopping spree. Just, I'm going to take all of these jackets, charge me. And then at the end of the day, like, after 2 weeks of doing that, you add up all the receipts and you're like, we only spent $30,000. Like, And now because of the price of Bitcoin and the action of it, like we basically have as
you
much.
You made $30,000 on what you had left over. So like your dollar balance is the same.
Yeah. Our spending power is exactly the same as where it was. Like, and that's another, like, man, did Bitcoin fix? Now somebody could argue like, yeah, what if the price had done the opposite? Yeah, but it didn't. And so it's amazing how incredibly hard it is to spend just $100,000. Like we can't do it. It's hard. And they're spending billions? Like what?
It's so crazy. Dichotomy. It could not be the more perfect illustration of the give a shit matrix of that where you are in the I give a shit about the costs and I give a shit about the results, and where that money is coming from is everything. Is that like there's no way that the multiple for what is actually going to explicit useful purpose versus funding a bureaucracy or just being wasted, that the multiple is not 1,000. That like that for every 30, think about it, 1,000 isn't even that much of a multiple. That you could spend $30,000 that FEMA wastes 30 million. They blew like 4 billion and nobody even knows where they were. Like how? Like I watched a report, a dude who was like, they got a group of people who had no houses anymore, and so they went to this hotel in order to give them a place for the night. And they were like, we want to book this hotel out. We've got this many people. Please, can we have these rooms? And this is an area where like there's no tourists right now. Like a hurricane just came through. There's no other reason for anybody to be in this hotel. And they said, sorry, we're full up on government employees.
Yeah.
That's the crap that like drove us up a wall in particular. It's like, really? Like you're supposed to be the saviors, and you're coming in and you're taking up these rooms, which should be for refugees. You guys want to provide help? You can provide help by showing up to provide help and sleeping in a goddamn tent.
FEMA should have trailers.
Sleep in the parking lot. Like you got transported there.
I'm not trying to tell the government how to like spend more money or like, but I would, if they're going to do it, I'd like them to be more efficient. So why don't they have a bunch of trailers that you can sleep like 8 people in, that have like a bathroom and a shower
that come in on a truck,
like a little Connex that we slept in when we were deployed. And when you show up to a disaster relief, you're not taking any resources. You're showing up with everything you need, plotting. You might need a piece of land or a parking lot to put this stuff in, and you are self-contained. Like one thing we were telling people before we even went out is if you're going out there, be an asset, not a liability. We showed up with all the food and fuel and everything we would need so that we don't have to rely on any local systems and overwhelm them even further if we don't have to. And you've got the government coming in and just gobbling it all up. Like this is the exact opposite of what needs to happen.
It's so basic. And it's the exact same excuse they give to like everyday people for not going out there, is that you're going to be a liability, like want to have to save you too, because you don't know what you're doing, or you got stuck, your car went off the road because of something, and now like you've just added to the problem. It's like, well, the exact same thing applies to you. How does any government employee come in and then take rooms that are available? You just became a liability. You just took real assets on the ground that the people who literally don't have houses need. You have a house to go back to, bitch. Get out of the room. Like, just like when somebody shows up with 50 people who need housing, get the fuck out of the room. Like, just pick your shit up, put it back in the bag, and get out of the hotel. Like, that should have been the end of it. The fact that they showed up should have been that the hotel was free now. Oh my God, it drives me crazy.
Guy, it shows to me like the mindset of the government entity or government world, like the way that they think about themselves versus the civilian population. Because like if you're like a good acting and well-meaning American, and you're responding to that situation as a federal employee that's wanting to go in and actually do good help, you're not accepting that hotel room.
Exactly. And if you find out that somebody's there, you get up, you get out of the room. Like if I was there, I would get the hell out of the room.
Yeah. The first thing that crosses my mind is like, well, what if the room that I'm taking could be going to like a single mother with 3 kids? Like, why do what? And there's nothing on this planet that says I deserve that more than that mother, like that family. So what was going through the federal employees' minds that were supposedly coming out to help, and they were allowing themselves to be placed in those hotel rooms?
Yeah.
Go sleep in the fucking van. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
I think once you understand the economic situation of the United States and how they're in a debt spiral, and there's only one way out of it, and it's to turn the money printer on so that they can inflate, so that they can pay off the debt, which just continues it. I mean, I think this audience all understands that, but once you understand that that's their incentive is not to spend money efficiently, it's to pump more dollars into the system, and any excuse there is to do that, they're going to take it. Now they're trying to do that while maintaining inflation. And so, they're between a rock and a hard place. It's literally mathematically, it's an impossible task, but they're still going to try to do it. And they're going to want to print money any chance they get. So a disaster is a perfect opportunity because people will be begging, yes, you need to do something.
Yeah.
And our funding's out, but we'll just print some more and send it out and put it into the economy. And we'll just, those inflation numbers aren't going to come in for a lot longer. So I'm kind of surprised that they're not using it as an excuse, and maybe even pumping up the death numbers higher as an excuse to print even more.
Yeah.
But it's clear that what they are putting into it is not even, it's way over proportion for what you would need.
Yeah.
Well, and it's just like the health stuff we were talking about earlier. They're not trying to solve the actual problems, because then it would reduce the amount of overflow buckets for the inflation. So they're in the business of not solving problems and just maintaining issues or creating more problems.
Yeah. But I wanted to get into, and I know we're probably a little limited on time here, and I've got I'm not sure if you can hear, there's they're banging on the floor or whatever, this construction happening.
No, I haven't
downstairs.
heard that at all.
There's trees going down in the back right now, and I'm making sure it's ridiculous here. But what was the biggest thing that you didn't expect? Shane brought up, which we didn't really get to talk about, but Shane brought up the that things that were happening with local gangs as well, and things that you're having to work around or deal with that you hadn't quite seen coming, or that maybe you did see it coming, but what's the situation there when it comes to gangs or just violence in the area, or people feeling like there is no structure and there is no norm to deal with?
So the gangs and the the reports of potential human trafficking, which we're still digging into that to get more clarity on. That's not necessarily surprising, just because it happens in other disaster zones, and it's something that having been deployed to areas that there's in a war zone, there's all this underlying nefarious activity that's not even related to the war and this side fighting this side. It's just a chaotic situation that people are taking advantage of. So that wasn't necessarily shocking, although it is something that we're taking seriously and we're trying to get more information on. The thing that was shocking to me the most was more of the 5th generation warfare, disinformation, misinformation tactics that were being employed. You probably saw plenty of, there's at least a couple articles about, militias working in the area. And it seemed like that was something that was being pushed. And so we were all right, well, we've not seen any of that. Let's go, because obviously, we don't want to run into an area where a militia is trying to run it. we're not trying to get rolled up by anything like that. And so we would go to like confirm or deny this information, and every time it was, no, this is not actually a thing. It was like either one guy who did something stupid that they're going back to, corporate journalism, legacy journalism.
And then just calling it a militia.
Yeah, they try to like portray this onto everybody, and they're coming after FEMA people. Like, okay, all this ends up being not accurate. And I'm trying to figure out how much I want to divulge, because this is still information that we're working on and groups we're still trying to work with. But there was basically there was a local guy that we were working with. He was running a local business, and he was like a hub at the time of getting resources out to the community. Well, as the days progressed, their footprint of like being that hub kind of started to dwindle. And we traced back the rumors of, or at least one of the rumors of militia activity back to one of his employees, but one of his employees that were coming from out in like the Raleigh area, right? Like he's got businesses over there too. So not like really a local. But then we talked to the local manager, and she's like about to break down in tears as she's telling her story. And she's like, yeah, they're having like secret meetings with the 101st and the 82nd. And we're like, all right, like how much of this is credible? Well, I come to find out on their Instagram posts of them like meeting with guys from the 101st and 82nd. So like, okay, I think her reporting is credible on that. And it was after those meetings that these reports of like the Christian Rangers are militia groups. And it's like, what? Like, that's not happening at all. And so you see, like, we're still trying to verify this, but it seems more likely than not. And that's kind of the way intelligence collection works, right? You're not always like 100% sure. You're just like, this is likely
Occam's razor
true.
From the pieces of information that we can get. Yeah.
And so it seems very likely, especially since that business owner kind of dropped off the map, kind of ghosted us, like right around all of this going on too, that it seems like the 101st and 82nd or somebody in that group was basically spreading the misinformation of there being militia groups, because they need to kind of scare us away from operating in these areas so that they can get this outside funding and support, right? Like, as long as there's people doing things for free, there were other groups that Shane, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, I think Shane called them disaster welfare whores.
Yeah, that'd be the correct term.
Get paid. Yeah, they get paid for coming to situations like this. And it's not all their funding is going to actual disaster relief. It's going to have their people paid, which it to some degree is true, but they cannot operate as long as groups like us are there doing it for free. Yeah, that's just the market. Like we've dropped the price of work to zero, right? And so now the funding is just going to the relief supplies. And so when they can't operate, they need to scare us out of the area. And that very much seemed like what was trying to be attempted through a lot of this reports, that every single one of those reports has now been proven to be wrong. And so throughout all the things that have happened over the last 4 or 5 plus years, what have we learned where most of the mis and disinformation comes from? It's the government itself.
Yeah.
And so that very much was like a surprising thing to be on the ground, like,
to see it firsthand.
Just like, we're here to help out and do what this nation does and like help our fellow citizens out in a time of need, and to be up against these centralized institutions, like basically trying to chase us off because we're doing it too efficiently.
Well, it's also important to kind of like when we're talking about like the 5th generation warfare stuff, like when they're doing this kind of stuff, it's not just going to be trying to scare us out of the environment. Like when they're doing it, they're accomplishing multiple objectives at the same time, because while they're maybe the primary objective is to try and scare us out, but injecting new information that's not easily verifiable or debunkable causes the the community to become frustrated. Right.
It sows confusion.
Yeah. It sows confusion. And in that confusion, the community gets frustrated. They get frustrated because they're confused. They get frustrated because they're hearing so many different things. They get frustrated because they can't confirm or deny any of it. So then they just want to wipe their hands of it completely. And so what do they default to? They default to pushing the outsiders out so that their sheriff and their like fire department can bring in the good guys to help out, right? But then they don't know, they can't. I mean, in these kind of like situations, like one thing that was really impactful to us, like getting out there when we were leading some of these key leader engagements, like primarily the one where we got the information of the 20 or so individuals that died of hypothermia the night before. All of these community leaders were still in shock by the time we got it. All three of us were out there. And so like when you have the leaders in intense levels of shock in a chronic kind of like situation where it's they're going to bed in shock, they're waking up in shock, they're not getting a whole lot of sleep, it's taking weeks on end, they're frustrated every single day because they're trying to get goods and supplies and make sure everybody is safe and whatever. Then you inject this fifth generation warfare aspect of where they're getting confused and frustrated by the information that's coming through from people that they thought were trying to like were going to be the good guys. It becomes a lot easier to understand the efficacy of this kind of strategy to be able to maintain the fiat like government welfare whore kind of like industry, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I read a pretty long post of someone, I can't remember where it was shared from, but someone was talking about, I've been in disaster relief with a number of different organizations, like it's something that I've specialized in for 15 years or something like that. And they were saying, if you want to understand what's happening with FEMA and why the government response ends up being the way it was, or the way it almost always is they have what, when they are spending government money, is they have preferred vendors. And those preferred vendors get all of the contracts and all of the money coming through to supply toilet paper, to supply everything for these facilities, to help set this up, to help supply personnel and all of these things. And so when you have a ton of just voluntary help, like just normal people on the ground in the way, it basically prevents them from getting that contract. It says like, okay, well, we don't need this anymore. So Walmart is not going to get this $1.5 million or probably $30 million to, buy a bunch of crap from what could have just been bought from Tractor Supply and Lowe's for $30,000. And it's all about protecting who they are working with, and that the money goes to the right people from their perspective. And which has nothing to do with the people on the ground. It has to do with who their partners are and who their friends are. And that he said, this is what I've always dealt with. I've seen this all over the place. And it's just that people just don't know that, you see political grifts everywhere. A grift is so much easier when it's an emergency and when everybody thinks that they're helping and nobody has time to verify anything and everybody has to act quickly. It's just ripe. It's just ripe for the picking for a lot of people. And when you institutionalize these things, that's just what happens. It's crazy because it's almost like
all part of business at that point.
Yeah, it's just business as usual, and they can't. And if they're going from disaster to disaster, just getting contracts or whatever, they're completely desensitized to it anyway. Even if they're good people, it doesn't really matter. Like on a long enough time span, it's just an institution, and it's just how things work, and it's just normal. It's like every banker in the country right now. You can apply this exact same thing to fiat and how our money works. Is every banker in the country right now doesn't necessarily have to be a morally bad person, but the only way to actually be a competitive banker is to take a low interest loan from the Fed, bump a couple of interest points on top of it, and then loan it out to other people. And you are perpetuating, like you are creating like a multi-trillion dollar misallocation of resources by participating in that. But it doesn't matter how good of a person you are, you're still just causing damage because you're part of a bad system.
Well, here's the beautiful thing about the fifth generation warfare that is being employed in North Carolina is that they're trying to do it against, like we pointed out earlier, there are a lot of veterans in the area trying to help out. Not just us, but like all across the area, there's a lot of veterans. And so it's really hard to get the public who left, right, and center generally views veterans as like a good group of people. It's, in a sense, it's kind of like a protected class, right? So you're trying to, every time you try to put out these articles about like, oh, they're a bunch of militia groups. And it's like, really? Because all the locals are there and they're like, yeah, these veterans are really like helping out. Like, are you going to have a bad apple here and there? Sure. But that's easy to like, find out, clarify, and be like, yeah. Also, all of these veteran groups have quickly said like, yeah, we want nothing to do with that guy because he's causing trouble. And so their strategies just isn't going to work.
They're overplaying their hand. It's kind of like when cancel culture went after people that like a lot of people really like Joe Rogan. They tried to cancel Joe Rogan, and it was just like too many people just knew that was bullshit.
Yeah.
Too many people just like, he's racist. Come on. Because he says racist jokes. He says hilarious, crude jokes all the time. You know what I mean? Like, it's Joe Rogan. Too many people knew him, quote unquote, too well for that to work. And I think you have a bit of the same situation here, especially when you've got people on the ground talking and like actually interacting, is that somebody external to it can only do so much damage with the information, because it's like, I know, I'm from North Carolina. I'm here. I'm talking to these people. And I think it just shows to the erosion of trust, just the sheer erosion of trust.
Yeah. We spent a couple days running around with reporters and stuff. One was somebody from the Washington Post. So like you can take that perspective that organization might have. But then we ran around with people from the Epoch Times and kind of like polar opposites, right? And when you're just kind of running around with them and you're showing them what is really happening on the ground, one, it's easy to show them like a lot of these stories are bogus because a lot of these stories are being reported by reporters who aren't on the ground. Like, you're here.
Yeah.
Where were they? Like, and I've even had them like sending me articles like, hey, like I heard about this. And it's this information's coming from somebody that I think is like a reputable source, and they're referring to the Southern Poverty Law Center. Yeah. And so you quickly like point out,
it's like, well, where are they now? I haven't talked to them.
Yeah, they're not here. And then you quickly point out like to these people we've been running around with, like, yeah, the Southern Poverty Law Center is not a reputable source. Like, here's some examples of how they are terrible. And they're like, oh, I should have done more research on this. Like, yeah, we're not idiots out here. Like, we're running around with you. Like, we're a bunch of veterans, but like, we know how to read books, and we do.
We're learned men with many leather-bound books.
My apartment smells of rich mahogany.
Exactly.
I'm curious, what's the strategy? We should probably wrap it up here pretty quick here. I don't want to take you guys forever. And I think I got a text. The construction guys need me downstairs. But what's kind of the strategy going forward and the schedule? Are you guys kind of like still going back out there? Are you mostly just working with the people who are still on the ground and who live in the area? Or are y'all cycling through? And what's kind of that 6-month plan? What are y'all thinking? And I know you've already kind of said that, like, it could change in a day, but maybe what's the big picture right now for the next 6 months?
The big picture is just like Shane going up. He's going to go back, like continue to have guys rotating in and out. Even after the three of us left, we had other guys kind of rotate in. So continuing to have guys rotating in and out, but then also staying in touch with the people that are staying there a little more permanently to continue to get that feedback That is like, generally, that's really the only long-term plan that we can have, is continue to get people on the ground to provide intel and feedback, and then adjust fire constantly, just constant adaptation of what is needed. So like we shifted fire to, providing hay, and then that quickly shifted to getting people into tiny homes and RVs and whatnot, like making sure that they have places to live. That's still a bit of a struggle for a lot of different reasons. What does that shift to? And then being able to have kind of this pot of resources that, like, same like you're doing, right? Like doling it out a little bit at a time as a need arises. And that's generally the long-term plan. Like, we say we have over $100,000 and we think that'll last us several months. Like we do. And it is so far. It's just identifying the new objective and then pushing resources and assets towards that. And that's the 6-month plan.
Well, and I think another, like a big kind of like keystone to it too is while we're doing the doling out, like kind of like play as you go kind of thing. It's also having the potential to respond to if there is another catastrophe that builds on top of this already prescient catastrophe, right? Because to kind of like build off of what I had mentioned earlier with like the community leaders being in shock and like the community in general being in shock, like the like one thing that was clearly not on top of mind for a lot of them was like, guys, like these kind of like these reports of death tolls coming in, they're not going to stop. Like, you're going into winter.
Yeah.
And you don't have power. Like, you're looking at dealing with issues as far as like,
do most areas still not have power? Like, how are even roads being, how quickly
roads are not going to be like that. That's going to be like well into spring before they can even provide a solution for those roads.
Dear God.
Like, the ground temperature has to be above a certain temperature in order for them to pave. So like the roads that are being fixed are basically patch jobs that the next just regular rain that comes is going to wash it away again.
Dear God.
And they're not going to be able to fix these roads until the spring.
Well, and then on top of like the infrastructure and the heating and the food, like what Shane was talking about, like there's all the particulate pneumonia that is coming from cleaning up like the flooded zones and everything. So you're looking at dealing with pharmaceuticals and nebulizers and inhalers, but then there's also like any of the other pathogens that are coming down through like the different like well water systems and like the chemical plants that were also mentioned earlier, like dealing with like the potential for cancers or whatever that's coming out of it. So like not blowing through the funds immediately is going to be able to allow us to kind of like shift fire, like Jordan was saying, to the most like the different objectives that can have the most positive outcome come out of them with the least amount of dollars spent. Like that's the adaptability and the shifting of fire is like the main strategy for the next 6 months to at least make sure everybody gets into the spring.
One last thing I would add is like, feel however you feel about like the conspiracy theories about like, is BlackRock trying to take over land or whatever organization. Well, like that may not be true. I can't prove that it is, but let's just pretend for a minute that it is. Well, we've seriously, not just us particular, but like as a nation, all the volunteers coming and helping out. If that is true, we've completely like wrecked and derailed their plans to do that, just from people thinking that it might be true and then coming in to help out and like being people on the ground to report information like this is going to make it very hard for, if those were plans, it's going to make it very hard for them to execute those plans, because you've got a bunch of eyes on the ground reporting things that they cannot control the narrative of anymore.
That's awesome.
So whether or not it's true or not, if in the event that it is true, it's very difficult for them to get away with.
Regardless of, like, it's like one of those things, if you build in robustness and resilience, it doesn't matter if your proposed narrative is true or not, and that vulnerability is that you've immunized yourself against it anyway. And that's one of the things that I think this election has proven, just in a much broader sense, but just the power of communication and the bandwidth of getting information out unfiltered, that is actually from a person to another person, and not from a person to a middleman, filtered, repackaged, and put in the context of whatever corporation or institution, whatever narrative they need or is useful to them, and then represented to everyone. That direct communication is so unbelievably critical. And how many things that it's like, it doesn't even matter if the conspiracy is true or not. Like, we don't have to know. We just need to, if it is, okay, well, then we need to set the things in place to mitigate it. If it isn't, we need to set the things in place to mitigate it. Like, it doesn't matter. Like, we have one course of action. Like, the fact that it could be is enough to do this. And like, that's just awesome. That's awesome. I wanted to seriously thank you guys for like just the huge amount of work and like attention that you guys have put on this, and the fact that you were there on the ground. Like, y'all have literally been my resource. Like everything has been a filter through you. And when it comes to just that discussion of one person to one person, like, y'all are right at the front of my web of trust into that entire area, and everybody except Shane. Shane can go fuck himself. But I just thank you guys so much, and it is awesome. And stay in touch, keep me updated. I'll be in the groups with everything on Signal, and also whether or not I had either you guys on the show before. I think maybe Mike, and I know Jordan, we've talked, but regardless, welcome to the show. I'm glad you were finally able to come on Bitcoin Audible. What's up? And I really appreciate it. Hell yeah.
No, we appreciate you being involved in the way that you've been involved, Guy. Besides inviting us onto your pod to talk about this, like, I think it was, at least for me, it was very touching to see somebody as yourself, like, just reach out and be like, hey, like, I want to be in the middle of this with you guys. Like, you inserted yourself in the gap with a bunch of veterans where most people would not be comfortable doing it. So like, you get a lot of respect from us, man. So we appreciate you.
Thank you. All right, guys. Y'all got any final words? Where can people? What's the call to action for listeners, and where can people find you? Because everybody obviously needs to be following y'all.
Yeah. Obviously, follow us on X and Nostr, Bitcoin Veterans. Specifically, go follow us on Nostr. We're about to, literally, when I get off of this, I'm about to release a bunch of interviews we did when we were in Nashville, including an interview we did with Preston Pish that is one of the most amazing interviews, I think, that will be unlike anything you've ever seen with Preston before.
Oh, hell yeah. I'll link to it in the show notes. If it should be out before we publish. So yeah, I'll link to that.
That'd be awesome. Get in touch with us, whether we go to our website, bitcoinveterans.org, reach out to us, get connected, whether you're a civilian or a veteran. Like, we've got chat groups for you that cover every topic. And if we're not covering a topic that you would like us to, then we will put you in charge of creating that new chat group, and we will start talking about that. And then to kind of piggyback on this entire conversation is, we've discussed the Meshtastic and being prepared and ham radio and all this stuff, and like how important communication is. Like, go out and learn this stuff, go out and get some devices and start sending these devices to people in your community and building out the network. Because if something happens in your area, hopefully, if we can, we'll be there to help and bolster that up. But we need nodes across the country doing things like this, like getting a bunch of Meshtastic devices ready and deployed. And you got to start learning about this beforehand, before the disaster strikes. So take the preparation seriously.
Yeah. When did Noah build the ark? before the storm.
The only kind of like parting words that I'll say is, besides what Jordan said, like give us a follow, Bitcoin Veterans on Twitter. We have a YouTube, but if you want to use, like, if you want to see the video stuff, like our YouTube is so heavily, I think like within like 5 minutes of every episode, we've hit at least 3 of the YouTube red flags, for censoring. So you guys can go to YouTube if you want, but like, don't expect to be impressed by like the view counts or anything. Cause yeah. But, one thing I will say, like to add to like the resiliency topic of the whole conversation of what Jordan was just saying, my first career or area of expertise was health, and just make sure that everybody is, if you're investing into Bitcoin, but you're not investing into your health, you're not really investing in anything, in my opinion. So like, make sure you're getting out and deadlifting and treating your body right, so you can be capable of responding to something like this in the future, whether it's your community that's next, or you want to be a part of like something like this. You got to be capable of not becoming a liability, and being that first line of security is your own personal health. So get out there and do some deadlifts, guys.
Hell yeah. That's a great way to end this, man. Thank you guys so much, Bitcoin veterans. I'll catch you guys on the next one. All right, and that wraps up today's show. A shout out to Jordan, Shane, and Mike for this really, really fantastic episode, and for them taking the time out of their busy schedules to join me and hang out for a bit. And don't forget to follow them, to check out everything they're doing. And don't forget to send a message to Average Gary that he's a total bitch for not showing up, and for like he has something more important to do. You know, that's not, you know what? We know what's happening. Shame on you, Average Gary. Shame on you, sir. So I will have links to find and follow all of them except Average Gary in the show notes. And I also will have my Folds Pearl link, so you can get, if you haven't signed up yet, to get gift cards and sats back for the holidays. Seriously, that's like one of my favorite hacks. I mean, anybody who's listened to the show for any length of time knows I use Fold for practically everything. But that is a really, really fantastic way to stack sats. So with that, we'll wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Don't forget to boost and stream sats on Fountain and on Noster. Those sats, seriously, it's awesome when I like boot up. Like, I've got my Albigo wallet hooked to my Start9, and it is so cool to just be getting zaps in my same wallet, and I can see all the comments. And I read and go through all of them regularly, by the way. Thanks for the shout outs on the Matrix meme and all of that stuff. Thank you guys. Seriously, it means a lot, and it goes further than you think. I try to make every single sat count when it comes to the show and my work and what I do. So thank you. With that, I'll catch you on the next one. This is Bitcoin Audible. I am Guy Swan. And until then, everybody, take it easy, guys.